If you have a third-gen Toyota Tacoma and you're considering upgrading your suspension yourself for off-road use on a budget, then this video is for you. Nearly 2 years ago, my friends and I installed the complete new suspension on my Tacoma, and tons of adventures have put it to the test since. I'll show you all the parts and tools needed to do this job yourself. And I'll reveal some pretty big mistakes I made initially that were corrected months after that first install. After all the installs, I'll give you a detailed overview of the performance of this suspension system, see how well it's held up, and who I'd recommend it to. Like I said earlier, this video is nearly 2 years in the making, and I paid full price for all the parts and tools you're about to see. Thanks to my channel sponsor, Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner, for making this video possible. All right, let's jump way back in time and get to work. Guys, the day has finally come to upgrade Sarge's suspension. I could not be more excited. Upgrade is needed because right now, because I've added so much weight to the truck, I don't know exactly how much ground clearance I've lost, but I am down to just 8 inches in the front.
You heard that right, only 8 inches of ground clearance, down 9.4 inches, which is stock for a TRD off-road. There was also an extreme rake front to back of 1.5 inches. This was due to adding a new bumper, winch, rock sliders, a roof rack, and beefier skid plates. All these things are great additions, with videos on each linked below, by the way, but you need to upgrade your suspension to compensate for the added weight, or get used to hitting every rock on the trail.
You hear that one? I sure did.
My goal with the suspension parts I chose was to keep the budget as low as possible, but only use high quality components and cut no corners. At the end of the video, I'll break down the final cost for all the parts I used. On-road and off-road performance, articulation, and handling all had to be just as good as stock or better.
Here on this table, you have all the front suspension parts, and the star of the show is definitely the Bilstein 6112. Lots of people swear by this shock. The reason why I chose it is, first off, because of its incredible reputation. You have a full, I think it's actually over 2.5 inch diameter monotube shock. Very, very high quality, assembled in the United States, zinc coated.
Based on documentation from AccuTune and reiterated from numerous other sources, the included 14-inch, 600-pound springs with the Bilstein 6112s can prove to be too soft if you've added weight to your truck. They perform great and are well suited if you intend on keeping your truck close to stock and just want a lift. However, if you plan to roughly add 400 pounds of constant weight to your truck, then 14-inch long, 650-pound springs are recommended, which is why I went with these.
These Eibach 650-pound springs were the ones that I chose. And also, just me being kind of a OCD kind of dude, I love that these are silver with silver, so when you look underneath my truck, it's all gonna be all matchy and junk, which I'm really, really excited about. So, Eibach springs.
Other parts included new strut top caps and a sway bar relocation kit. Links and part numbers are in the description below.
Well, that's it for the front. Let's check out the back.
In the rear is where I initially tried to save the most money. I went with Bilstein 5100 shocks instead of 5160s that include remote reservoirs. At the time, I thought a simple 1-inch lift block would do the trick. Spoilers, it looks great, but yeah, this won't work out in the long run. Hope you guys appreciate YouTubers that share their mistakes. I'll talk more about leaf springs and also bump stops later in the video, but let's get to that install. For a list of tools, check the description or pause the video now. I'll call out socket sizes and so forth as we go. I also have a video that dives deep into all the tools I use for working on my vehicles, and I'll link that below as well. I started in the rear of the truck. I'll show you the lift blocks first and new leaf springs later. There are chapter markers below to jump between topics or sections of this install and review. Lift the rear of the truck high enough to be able to fully articulate the rear axle left to right. I secured the truck in place originally with 6-ton jack stands in front of the axle on the frame. But if you have taller 10 or 12-ton jack stands, you can support the frame all the way at the rear. This is way more stable and safer in my opinion.
Hey, up. Hey, by the way, Toyota, this truck has 7,000 miles on it and has not gone through an entire winter yet, and the rear drums look like this. Boo!
A great resource to follow, besides this video, is Toyota's own TRD Lift Kit instructional PDF. Even though the parts are different, the process and torque specs are all applicable. Link to this document is also in the description. Disconnect the bracket holding the parking brake cable in place with a 12mm wrench or socket. Using a 17mm wrench or socket, remove the nut from the base of the shock. Lift the axle slightly on the side you're working on with a floor jack. Now remove the bolt at the base of the shock. Remove the nut from the top of the shock with a 17mm wrench, holding the top of the shock with an adjustable wrench to keep it from spinning.
So on the top of your shock, you have your nut, you have a washer, and you have your top bushing. Just lift up, pop this out. There you go. So dainty. But yeah, then you have your special washer, your bushing, and another washer. So it's really, really easy to put these back together just as long as you know the sequence.
The new Bilstein 5100s are a substantial upgrade over the stock 4600s, going from a 1.5 inch to a 2-inch shock body. Time for that lift block that makes your truck ride like crap. Interesting note, the Toyota TRD lift kit that they sell also uses a lift block, but it's not quite as large. With that rear axle still supported, remove the 2 U-bolts that secure the axle to the leaf springs with a 19mm wrench or deep socket. Lower the axle so the lift block can be placed between the spring and the axle. It's a good idea to use WD-40 to clean any dirt from the mating surfaces to prevent rust.
Here's a nice close look at our lift block, and the F is for front, so you want it to go towards the front. Oh. Oh, do I hear someone? Nope. I thought I did.
Finish the installation with new longer U-bolts and hardware, putting everything back as it was before, tightening the U-bolts down evenly, and then torquing to 52 foot-pounds.
Ew! Do I hear somebody? Haha! It's my favorite fellow truck enthusiast. Woo! The U-bolts are in, so now we can drop our axle all the way and install our shock. Meh. Meh. Meh.
Put the new rear shock in place with the new bushings, washers, and nut. The new top nut is secured with a 17mm wrench, holding the shock body in place with a 5mm Allen wrench.
Oh!
Have a light blinding me or anything?
Oh, you can't get your ship out.
If we could get our ship out, we would, but we can't, so why don't you just
get your ship out?
Hey, get out of there!
Torquing the bottom nut down with the axle in full droop can damage the new lower bushing. To simulate the vehicle being under its own weight, lift the rear drum slightly with a floor jack.
At the end of the day, I mean, just do whatever feels right.
Yeah, just follow your heart. Just follow your heart. There we go.
The torque spec for the top nut is 15 foot-pounds. But a good general rule is to just tighten the nut down till the top bushing mushrooms out to fill the cupped washer. Reinstall the emergency brake cable bracket, put on your wheel, and the rear suspension is done.
Does it look silly?
It looks ridiculous. What did you do?
Oh no! The rake is even worse. It's a sport truck now.
When I first did the suspension lift install, I thought I also needed to install a drive shaft bearing spacer kit. These are a good idea if you're lifting your truck beyond 3 inches. In my case, I was going no higher than 2.5 inches, so I later came back and removed this part. In most cases, this isn't necessary. We'll revisit the rear suspension later when we delete the lift block, upgrade the leaf springs and bump stops, but it's time to move to the front suspension. Secure the vehicle on jack stands and remove the front wheels. Remove the front skid plate to gain access to the sway bar. Remove the sway bar entirely from the vehicle. It's connected by end links to the knuckle with a 17mm nut and 2 brackets with 14mm nuts. Removing the sway bar makes installation much easier. Once both sides are done, we'll reinstall it as one of the final steps. Install the new sway bar relocation kit with OEM hardware.
Let's just torque it now. Let's just do it. 30, what, 37?
37.
Foot, pounds, foot,
Pounds.
footsie pounds?
This moves the sway bar forward slightly to prevent the sway bar contacting the new shocks.
I'm gonna briefly talk about just kind of how we're gonna take stuff apart, and then we'll start taking it apart. It'll be fun. We'll take this out right here and this screw out right here, so we kind of have our brake lines free for when we need to move the knuckle around. Then we're going to disconnect the tie rod. Then we're going to disconnect the upper ball joint nut right here, and that's when we're gonna have to support the whole knuckle. And then we'll take the bottom nut off the shock, and then the top, and take it out, and then put the new one in.
If you happen to be working on a vehicle lift, it's also possible to simply disconnect the lower ball joint, loosen the lower control arm, swing it out of the way, and drop the strut out from the bottom. So how you do this job is up to you, but I prefer this process.
19mm. This is supposed to be able to be removed by hitting this with a hammer on the side. That never works. But what does work is this. But we will try the hammer method one time. Brass hammers are great for this kind of thing. Told you it's not gonna work, Chris. Got it? Cut back to the 4Runner thing where we like struggled on that for like 2 hours.
It was a lot.
Yeah, this is like $10, so buy one. For the next parts, you're gonna wanna support your lower arm. So we're gonna lift off the big ball joint nut at the base. Yeah, ha! There you go. Gonna pop. See?
Support the knuckle with a floor jack. Be careful because if the assembly droops too far, you can risk popping your CV axle out of place. Remove the lower strut bolt and nut with a 19mm socket and wrench.
Took some tension off of it.
Just like you planned.
Just, you know what, Chris?
What, Jason?
I think you and I are gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Then remove the top 3 mounting nuts with a 14mm ratcheting wrench. Ratcheting wrenches are worth their weight in gold on this step.
Treat your ratcheting wrenches with love and respect. Never hit them with hammers, okay?
Time to assemble the new coilover and put everything back together.
So again, look at the difference. This is kind of hilarious and awesome. We're gonna now assemble the new one. You could take the old one apart and reuse the top cap if you wanted to, but we're gonna have a new one so I can keep this one together to give it away or sell it or something like that. This is the front, this will be the front, so we're gonna want we have essentially a triangle of mounting nuts on the mounting bolts on the top here with our top hat. We're gonna match that on the new one. We're gonna have to set our ride height. So this is gonna be the driver's side, and I want that maximum lift that we're gonna achieve, hopefully between 2 to 2.5 inches. So we're gonna need to move this C-clip all the way to the top, which is all the way to position 11. On the passenger side, we went to position 9 because, again, of the taco lean. This is the lower side because this is the side with more weight. So we're gonna compress this guy. This is the part where everyone tells you you're gonna die and you're a darn fool for doing it yourself. It is dangerous if you're being stupid. If you're being careful and using the right tools, I have yet to perish. And I've done this, I think we were talking about it, I think 6 times, right? I've done this 6 times and I've not died yet. Famous in memoriam. Yeah. Well, okay. These are the spring compressors that I've used many times. These will not work for this because these kind of interfere with how large the new shock is. Also, this kind also scratches the bejesus out of your springs. So we're gonna be using a new type. I will link these below. This is a US company. that makes these and engineers them, and they actually have like protection rubber boots on here. But these work really, really slick. Let's do it right now. I'll show you how it works. Also, moving the clip up, we marred a little bit, so we're doing this all on the back. Like this will be our front, so we might scratch a little bit up on our back.
First, set your ride height and preload with the circlip. In my case, this was position 11 or the very top on the driver's side, and position 9 or third from the top on the passenger side. To compress the spring, place your spring compressors perpendicular to each other as you see here. These compressors also have extra safety clamps to make sure the hooks don't slip, so I tighten those down.
And these get a little looser while doing this, so you can tighten them up as you go. Keep everything safe. And we'll explode that way if it does explode.
Compress the spring a little at a time on each side, trying to be as even as possible.
Don't forget your billet aluminum spring seat. Just like that.
Compress the spring enough that you'll be able to attach the strut top cap and thread in the locking nut.
No. Okay.
More compression.
We got it. Nice. And again, just, you know, for detail reasons, logo, and the two there. And that's your front. 20 foot-pounds, so pretty much hand tight is all you want.
Until you're tired.
Until you... Okay, I'm done.
With the top nut secured, release the spring compressors evenly a little at a time.
Expertly assembled 6112 coilover!
Installation is the reverse of removal. Put the new strut assembly in place with the three 14mm nuts at the top. Thread in the lower strut bolt and nut, but don't torque them down yet. Connect the upper ball joint to the knuckle, but we'll tighten everything down in a sec. Reattach your tie rod end, and I opted to use a small amount of anti-seize to the mating surface. With everything loosely attached, let's torque everything down. The torque spec for the three top 14mm nuts is 47 foot-pounds. Getting a torque wrench in there, even with a crow's foot attachment, kinda stinks, so you know, Guten tight is also a usable torque. Torque the upper ball joint nut to 81 foot-pounds and install a new cotter pin.
Is this really impressive? I think everyone will like and subscribe now. There we go.
Never had them until the cotter pin.
Torque the tie rod end to 41 foot-pounds, and again install a new cotter pin. Reconnect the two brackets holding your brake line in place.
Everything is tightened and torqued, minus the lower shock bolt. Now, to tighten that one, you want the assembly to be under its own weight. So we're simulating that with the jack here. We're just barely off that jack stand back there, and we need to torque this guy to 61 foot-pounds. Then we torque and install the sway bar to 37 foot-pounds, and then we put wheels on, and I get to go to bed. 52, whatever. Ha!
God, it's beautiful. The depth of field.
Is it?
Yeah.
I knew it would be.
I'm gonna be so proud.
Put the front skid and wheels back on, and that would be a wrap usually. It's a good practice to drive the truck and let it settle for a few days, then go get a professional alignment, which all went very well. However, there was a harsh contrast between how well the front felt both on and off-road versus the back. So now in summer 2023, it was time to get back to work.
I made a horrible mistake. You want to come see the horrible mistake? Yeah? All right, let's go. Lift blocks. Lift blocks give you the look you want, but do they give you the performance you want? Absolutely not. So the Tacoma's stock leaf springs are kind of known for being a little weak just on a stock truck, but when you have them preloaded this much with a lift block, you can essentially see that these are flat. So we're essentially riding on the overload springs pretty much all the time, and that means that the truck rides like garbage. So let's check out the new parts and fix this.
After doing a ton of research, I went with Old Man Emu Dakar medium duty leaf springs. These provide up to a 2-inch lift over stock depending on how much additional weight you're running. And they're rated at 300 pounds of constant weight over stock. These require purchasing bushings separately, so I bought 2 sets of those. And to finish out the new parts, I picked up front and rear progressive bump stops from Super Spring. These aren't 100% required for this suspension upgrade, but I highly recommend them or similar ones, and I'll have more to say about them in the review later in the video. My buddies Nate and Chris came over to help with this install, and we made quick work of this job. I'll move quickly over stuff already explained earlier in the video and cover swapping the leaf springs in detail.
Since we gotta lift this vehicle so high today, we might as well use some big jack stands to be able to get them on there, so this should be pretty good.
Now I need to buy giant jack stands.
They're so light.
Quiet.
It's amazing.
I hate you.
We already did the driver's side, so we look like we know what we're doing, at least sort of. So we'll start taking this side apart. We're gonna disconnect this bracket right here that holds your brake line in place, then the lower bolt for the shock, and then the U-bolts. Ah! Throw this stock bump stop in the trash.
Remove the 19mm bolt and nut at the front of the leaf pack. Good luck, because it's a son of a gun.
Woo! God, get.
You're not doing a good job.
I'm doing a fine job.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, you just have to sass me and I have
yeah.
more power. No one believes in me. Oh, there we go. Jeez Louise, get out. There we go.
There it is.
Whew, this guy did not want to come out.
At the back of the truck, remove the 19mm bolt and nut connecting the leaf shackle to the frame. And then sell your complete old suspension to a nice older gentleman on Facebook Marketplace. Remove the hanger from the old leaf spring because it will be reused.
Bonus points if you know what movie we're watching in the background. So we're going to lube the bushings with some synthetic grease. Nate, these squeak, right? So you want to definitely lube
If
these.
they're not greased, they will squeak. So
Okay.
Install the new Old Man Emu bushings into the leaf pack.
What? It's what you're supposed to do.
Then install the OEM rear hanger. The new leaf pack center bolt was too long to work with the new Super Spring progressive bump stops. Simple fix, just trim about a 1/4 inch off the top. Install the new leaf pack with the arrow pointing towards the front of the truck. It can be tricky lining up the new spring to the frame mounting points, but Nate showed us an awesome trick using a ratchet strap.
So while we were working, it looks like the axle probably shifted a little bit, but for the front of the leaf spring, it's not lining up. So we're going to use the ratchet strap trick that Nate told us about. Can we line that up? The bolts by your knee, Nate. Oh, that's cool, man. That's a nice trick.
as I bump it.
Harbor Freight's finest. Woo. Okay, we got both bolts in the leaf spring, so now we're gonna lift it up a little bit. We'll get the lower bolt into the shock, and then we'll put the U-bolts in, and we'll be golden. Or bronze. Screw you, Chris!
Secure everything down, including the U-bolts and brake line bracket.
Expertly torqued.
But wait to torque stuff until the truck is back on the ground.
That's a rake right now, holy crap.
It'll settle.
It'll settle, it'll be fine.
Torque the lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. Evenly torque the U-bolts to 52 foot-pounds. Torque the lower shock bolt to 43 foot-pounds. Torque all the front and rear leaf spring bolts to 89 foot-pounds. Lastly, to replace the front bump stops, lift the front of the vehicle so the wheel is slightly off the ground, but you can leave it on. Use a pipe wrench to remove the old bump stop. I needed to cut the new bump stop's mounting bolt slightly to be able to thread it in. Apply some blue Loctite and thread it in by hand, and now we are done. Time for a long-term review and inspection after over 20,000 miles of use. But first,
do you guys know what's as equally awesome as upgrading your own suspension? Well, that would be Techron, both when you gas up before you hit the trail, like I did today, and Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner.
Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner is a premium fuel additive designed to keep your entire fuel system clean. It does this by cleaning deposits from fuel injectors, carburetors, intake valves, and combustion chambers. This restores lost power and maximizes your fuel economy. Use it seasonally to keep your vehicle running like new. Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner works in any gasoline engine, even hybrids. I use it in all my vehicles, and for your high mileage cars and trucks, I love Techron High Mileage, which has all the benefits of regular Techron, but also stabilizes gasoline for up to 24 months. Thanks Techron for sponsoring Jason Explains Things.
Let's do a performance review. How happy have I been with the suspension on the Tacoma since everything was finalized? Again, after the rear leaf springs were upgraded and those bump stops, I've been extremely pleased. Here are some of my thoughts recorded almost, I think, a little over a year ago while I was doing a 600-mile off-road journey with the Tacoma on the Washington Backcountry Discovery Route.
We're on a short highway section on our Washington Backcountry Discovery Route, and just thinking about the suspension for a second, it's great. On road, it's fantastic. Right after installing this, especially before the leaf springs, I was not happy with the ride quality. I felt like the back almost was like skipping around all the time, but now it's dialed in. You know, obviously this isn't a sports car, but it drives. As far as trucks go, I think this thing drives fantastic as far as handling and comfort on the road is concerned. Talking about the Tacoma suspension for a second, this is actually a really good comparison. I've done this trail many times. I think the last time I did it, I didn't have the new Bilsteins with the old Man Emu springs in the back, the Eibach springs in the front. It is so much different now. Obviously I'm not I'm not going as fast as Chris is, but there were several times doing this exact spot where, woohoo, some ruts there, where I bottomed out and kind of and touched the ground with my skid plate, because of the squishiness of the stock TRD off-road shocks. They're too soft, frankly. Well, with this, I'm not bottoming out. I can go a little bit faster. It's awesome. This truck is definitely different, and get to have some fun here.
So on that journey and the many since then, I've been very, very happy. Great performance overall. One note on alignment, I haven't had to get it aligned and it still tracks straight when I'm driving down the highway even today. But it's been hundreds of miles of off-road use since it was last aligned when I finalized everything. So it might be time to do it again relatively soon. I would say that I definitely achieved my original goal of upgrading my suspension to something that performs very, very well, but for as little money as possible. But again, while buying quality, mostly made in America products. Now, is there better performing suspensions out there? Obviously, yes. Since doing all of this work, I've definitely been kind of exposed to the really, really good stuff. In my time when I worked in the UTV market, I experienced some pretty incredible things, like the Can-Am Maverick R. That thing can go 70 miles an hour off-road, and it just seems to float over the ground. It's absolutely incredible. I did the launch event for the new Chevy Colorado AEV Bison. That suspension is probably the craziest suspension I've ever experienced in a mid-sized truck. I mean, I love my Tacoma. That suspension blows this suspension out of the water. I'm just gonna be honest about that. Can it be better than this? Obviously, yes. But if you're gonna do that, then you're talking, probably spending double, triple, or more than what I paid. So again, original goal achieved. Could it be better? Of course it could.
Let's do an inspection after a year and a half and 20,000 miles of use, and go over some final specs. The front and rear Bilstein shocks and Eibach springs look great and are free of corrosion. The old Man Emu leaf springs have had some paint chip off, but overall look good. And like other aftermarket leaf springs, they don't squeak other than when they're very dirty. When that happens, take it to a car wash, spray them off, and they quiet back down. Bump stops look great and made an immediate difference on rough roads and going off-road. They are tall, so they contact sooner than stock bump stops, but are much smoother. And for the money, I'm very pleased. The only thing that looks bad during this inspection, my rear drums I probably should paint those. For those final numbers, I achieved a lift of roughly 2.1 inches over stock and 3.5 inches from when the truck was overly weighed down. I have 11.5 inches of ground clearance in the front, and there is a 1-inch rake from front to back. I'm happy with this because when the truck is loaded up with weight, the truck manages that load very well and looks level. And now for the full price of my suspension system. Step 1, including the 6112s, the 5100s, and the Eibach springs, was $1,141.23. The old Man Emu leaf springs were $660, including the bushings, and the front and rear bump stops were $552.14. Total cost, $2,353.37. Obviously, prices change literally every day, but that's what I spent.
Do I have any future plans to upgrade components? And the answer is definitely yes, eventually. Probably not anytime soon. I honestly don't know when this will happen, but I will likely change up a few things. With the rear, I chose Bilstein 5100s instead of 5160s that have the external reservoir, a little bit more, oil capacity and what have you. I might eventually go with Bilstein 5160s in the back. That would be an incredibly easy upgrade. Currently, I'm running 265/70R17 KO2 tires. I eventually want to go with a 33. When that happens, I'll likely need additional adjustability for clearance reasons, for fitting larger tires. So at that point, I'll likely do new upper control arms. Something from Camberg or Peak Suspension is what I'm kind of looking at the most. Something that gives me additional wheel travel, strength, adjustability, that sort of thing. And a lot of those upper control arms look really cool. So that'll be fun when the time is right to do that. Guys, let me know what you think of this suspension setup and the install process down in the comments below. I do have additional upgrades planned for my Tacoma and also my 4Runner, so hit that subscribe button, and until next time, God bless, and don't forget to do it yourself.